We're at the top of the hour, so welcome everyone to our Living Deeply series. I'm Anna Murphy, the Shift in Action Program Director, and today we're very excited to have as our guest Walter Bates, and the host, I will hand it over to Tina Emmerich. Go ahead, Tina.
Hi, everybody. It's my great pleasure to introduce to you Walter Bates. I had the great fortune of meeting him through the IONS membership network, and through a series of conversations, we collaborated on teaching a course for his international seminar at the university that he is a professor at, and I'll let him tell you more about that later in our conversation. So we did this international seminar on transformational leadership, applying the principles of the transformation study in the Living Deeply book with Walter's own research on the quantum interpretation of business and Erna Oldenboom's research also and work in Ayurveda and other alternative health practices. So let me start by telling you a little bit about Walter. He pursued a career in strategic planning, decision support, and IS consultancy for more than 10 years before joining the academic world, and then the academic world was blessed to have him. He's a professor of complexity, knowledge, and innovation, associate dean for research, and MBA director at Euromed Marseille School of Management, which is the second largest business school in France. He coordinates the Euromed Center for Knowledge Management. Previously, he was the director of graduate program at Marseille. Before he came to Euromed, he held the Phillips Chair in Information Technology at Nyenrode, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that, Walter, Business University in the Netherlands. Sort of. And he held many other academic positions in Belgium, France, the Netherlands, and Spain. He got his PhD from the University of Warwick in Industrial and Business Studies in France.
No, in England.
In England.
Yeah, Warwick Business School in England.
There you go. Okay, so then there's you have such a long list of academic credentials, and it doesn't even get close to describing who you are. He's a very multifaceted human being and a deep thinker, and it was just a lovely experience for me to collaborate with you and Erna in teaching the seminar. We had 60 students. Most of them were French, but a good percentage of them came from all over the world, including Siberia and China and Africa. And it was thrilling to bring this information to these from my perspective, babies. And I think it was well received, and I'm excited to share some of what Walter's been doing in the world with you.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we begin by talking about what exactly do you mean by a quantum interpretation of business? I'm holding here your book that was published in 2006 entitled Complexity in Learning and Organizations, a Quantum Interpretation of Business. So what does it mean? What do you mean by that?
So I just summarized the book in one sentence. That's what you asked me to do. Good. Well, what I understand by quantum interpretation of business is that mainstream management thinking is basically Newtonian. It is deterministic and it is time reversible. Deterministic means it thinks in causalities. You do something and it has an effect and you can measure that effect. That's a deterministic part. The time reversible part is the fact that whatever happens, if you know the situation today, you know what's going to happen tomorrow, you know what happened yesterday, and all that with the same certainty, which of course in reality is not true. And we have a much closer feeling with what happened yesterday. We know what happened yesterday, and we have no clue what is going to happen tomorrow. In a Newtonian world, we should have the same clue of what is going to happen tomorrow as what happened yesterday. So that sort of is the mainstream management thinking. Now, that means that management thinkers think on a very high level of aggregation. I'd say think about customers and markets and products, and all that is causally related. However, if you now would go what the quantum interpretation does to the small level, the level of the detail, the level of the interaction, the level of many elements that all interact with each other, then you're talking about the quantum interpretation. Now, what does such a quantum interpretation mean in management? Just as it means in all other sciences, it accepts synchronicity, it accepts non-locality, it accepts entanglement as constructing elements, and basically it studies emergence. So it is a very constructivist view. So once you accept the quantum ontology, you see that things emerge, you accept them as they are today, you have no clue where they go, but on the other hand, thanks to that quantum reality behind, you have actually a quite important impact on that emergence, and a completely different impact than a causal one, right? And basically that quantum interpretation, once you would accept it, since it's an interpretation, it's an acceptance, fundamentally questions assumptions behind economics, such as rationality, just to give one example, and questions a lot of assumptions behind management theory.
So in this new paradigm view, what is the role for consciousness, or is there a role for consciousness or a mind over matter?
I certainly think so. Once you accept that quantum interpretation, then you could go and see what are the driving forces, what make that things happen, what makes that the manager becomes a leader, what makes a product successful or less successful, right? And that are things, consciousness, awareness, interconnectedness, are things that in management are not dealt with. And I put aside maybe some exceptional leadership theories, where of course we talk about the consciousness of the leader, but we don't understand it in the same sense as you understand it, as the Noetic Society understands it. Now, just as there is an important role of consciousness in healing, for instance, that you can observe, and of course you're doing a lot of research on that, the same consciousness and the same impact of consciousness on management processes should be observable. We just didn't do any effort. The same is true for mind over matter experiments. Just as it works in healing, just as the mind indeed seems to have an impact on matter, why would that be any different in managerial processes, which are nothing else than human social processes? Now, as far as I know, there's hardly any research done, and personally, of course, I would be very, very happy to be able to do this kind of research, but I think until now we didn't start doing that yet.
Do you think that, Walter, there's a place for a quantum interpretation in business schools and in the business world?
There should be. I'm not so sure whether there is for the time being. It is certainly not mainstream. That is clear. Whatever you try, well, you've lived through the experience also in our business school, and we try to do different. But nevertheless, even within a school that tries to do different, it is not always easy to get things like a quantum interpretation accepted. So it is not mainstream. That is something we have to know. We do see some exceptions. There are maybe some courses that talk a little bit about consciousness, but even then, I wouldn't exaggerate that too much. As I said, not surprisingly, and that's one of the reasons I am down here in the south of France, is we try to develop a slightly different approach that I like to label a systemic management paradigm. Right? And that systemic management paradigm is based on a quantum interpretation. It's kind of a quantum ontology. Once you accept a quantum